Good morning, President of the General Assembly, Xaba Korosi, Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, colleague heads, heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, I congratulate you on your election to preside over the 77th session of this august body, and I assure you of my country's full support during your presidency. Mr. President, at last year's general debate, I called on leaders to build a better world, a planet for those living today, but more so for those generations yet to come. So today, I would like to take you back to 1992, when Stephen Suzuki spoke at the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. She appealed to everyone to help stop the destruction of the Earth's resources. And now, 2022, we are here. The current state of the world does not need another wake-up call. It is time for real action. And while some progress has been made, we have not yet been successful in overcoming the challenges. Meanwhile, the threats have been adding up. Economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic slowed. Worsening climate crisis with extreme weather events, biodiversity loss and ecosystems collapse, increasing levels of poverty and hunger, and yes, a humanitarian crisis. The global community is faced with escalating consumer and fuel prices that have risen substantially, damaging living standards, particularly for the vulnerable. Therefore, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, have we treated our Earth in a sustainable way? Are we better prepared for the next pandemic? Has access to climate financing improved? Have we addressed the root causes for the humanitarian crisis and unregulated migration? Have we ensured that the most vulnerable in our societies were lifted out of poverty and hunger? And have we provided for their needs? And we are taking enough actions together as one? Mr. President, Secretary General, colleague heads, we all can conclude that we are not ready and have not taken all the necessary measures. And as leader of my country, Suriname, a small country, one of only 3 carbon-negative countries in the world, I appeal to you today, let us uphold our firm commitment to international principles and international law by all when addressing the global challenges and threats. Today, I urge the United Nations to exert its important role and place in defense of these principles through meaningful dialogue and constructive engagement as tools. These developments will take us further from our shared objectives in 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the promise of leaving no one behind. Mr. President, no country is immune to the climate crisis. Over the past months, Suriname has been affected by excessive rainfall, resulting in floods in many parts of the country. Due to the inflow of salt water, fertile agricultural land was adversely affected, causing economic loss and impacting food security and rural livelihoods. The Secretary General visited Suriname, and during his visit in July this year, he witnessed firsthand the impact climate change, particularly the climate change effect on the low-lying coastal states. He lauded our nature-based solution, such as preserving mangroves, rainforests, and other essential ecosystems. And he stated, the Caribbean is ground zero for the global climate emergency. Mr. President, that is why it is time to act now. We have delivered the $100 billion commitment in climate finance for adaptation. As such, we call for support for a research agenda that will help the region understand the cost of climate change on sectors and economies. Scaling up the means of implementation, including finance, particularly adaptation finance, capacity building, and technology transfer, and not technology dumping. Scaling up finance for adaptation and for response to loss and damage, with prioritization for Caribbean SIDS to access grant and concessionary finance, including through bilateral channels in particular. The establishment of a loss and damage facility under the UN FCCC that would provide SIDS with resources to finance loss and damage resulting from climate change. In this regard, I express appreciation to the Secretary General of the United Nations for his efforts to make the adaptation funds more accessible to countries affected by climate change through his adaptation finance initiative. Mr. President, finance is the backbone of sustainable development. The time has come, and the time is now, for a real reform of the global financial architecture, a reform that must take into consideration the unique and inherent vulnerabilities that hamper the ability of small and vulnerable economies to overcome economic, environmental, and social shocks. I therefore welcome the appointment of the high-level panel on multidimensional vulnerability index, and we look forward to finding solutions to address the obstacles to realizing the index, in particular the availability of reliable data. Mr. President, the political, economic, and humanitarian crisis in Haiti remains a great concern to the region and requires the attention of the international community. In my capacity as current CARICOM chair, I am committed to exerting all efforts for a dialogue with all stakeholders in Haiti aimed at safeguarding peace and security. It is of utmost importance that any support in resolving the situation in Haiti should be on the basis of a Haitian-supported and owned plan. Conflicts and violence are currently on the rise globally in all regions, which are leading to hostilities and displacements. These hostilities and mass displacements are causing people to face paralyzing levels of poverty and food insecurity. We as member states constituting the United Nations should take up our role in maintaining international peace and security. The achievement of sustainable development is inextricably linked to upholding democratic values, good governance, and respect for human rights. We must allow countries to develop sustainable economies without obstacles. Mr. President, in today's world, differences must be resolved through dialogue and cooperation. Therefore, in our view, the long-standing embargo against Cuba and the Cuban people must be lifted. I believe, Mr. President, that young people are valuable and undeniable partners in every development aspect and in shaping the future. Let me also congratulate the General Secretariat for the establishment of a youth office in the United Nations Secretariat. As lead head within the quasi-cabinet of the Caribbean community responsible for regional youth development, I was pleased with the interaction of region's youth during the last CARICOM leaders meeting held in Suriname. I commend them for taking the responsibility and inspiring their peers to not only demand a seat at the table, but also show up consistently. On my part, Mr. President, I have pledged 10 hectares of land in Suriname for setting up an innovative campus where students and startups from the region will be facilitated to conduct research and development studies. Mr. President, since I took office 2 years ago, my government has been making efforts to bring the economy back on track and bring the development of the country on the right path from an extremely unsustainable position. While a homegrown recovery plan, a 36-month extended fund facility of the IMF, and a national multi-year development plan are in implementation, my government continues to face economic challenges and capacity constraints due to external and unforeseen shocks. Based on the impact of several crises and the measure to reform the economy, the population is going through the hardship now. Therefore, international support in this regard is of utmost importance. Mr. President, to avoid further hardships and to bring some relief to the population, we have taken a decision to re-engage with the IMF to consider where the program can be adjusted to implement the program based on the current realities in the world and to minimize the social cost of this program. We appreciate bilateral and multilateral partners who have expressed solidarity and have provided valuable support to my country and people during these challenging times. Additionally, our goal is to attract investment, to improve productivity and capital allocation, which are critical for growth and poverty reduction. In conclusion, Mr. President, Secretary General, colleague heads, effective and consensus-based multilateralism is the only option for solving the interlocking challenges our world faces today. National solutions to resolve global problems have time and again proven to be ineffective and at times dangerous. Through global solutions with adapted local or national implementation, we should achieve the future we want. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, together we can, together we will, together we have, and together we are stronger. I thank you, and may God bless you all. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Suriname for the statement just made, and I